welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Li Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoyed this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am Managing Director at CNY Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at cnwaterwinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Good afternoon, Lei. In a cold Michigan, can you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Happy Chinese New Year of the rabbit again, or the year of the cat for the Vietnamese community.
Yes, the year like Mao, right? Meow.
This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 102. This is our first episode in the year of the rabbit, and also a special Groundhog Day edition. 6 more weeks of winter starting off with the deep freeze this weekend in my neck of woods. Minus 35 wind chill. That's Fahrenheit.
That is a ridiculous number.
Yeah, it's going to break some records, I heard. So it's been 2 weeks already since we last talked. Let me kind of recap the big headlines in my opening monologue. There's quite a bit, so bear with me. Maybe I'll spend a couple of minutes on this. Volkswagen Group CEO Oliver Blume has landed in China. Too simple has become too complex. Toyota has a new CEO, and Nissan and Renault have a new cross-shareholding structure. Honda has announced a new fuel cell strategy. The fine print, second half of 2030s. And GM has now full control of Lithium America's Thacker Pass lithium project, record-breaking $650 million investment. Our Next Energy has landed a new $300 million investment.
Officially a unicorn.
ZF and Wolfspeed have created that R&D and production for the fabrication of 200-millimeter silicon carbide semiconductor in Germany. Mercedes has received the level 3 certification in the state of Nevada. Lightyear has suspended production of the Lightyear Zero and is in trouble, I think. Following Tesla, XPeng, Ito, Leapmotor, GAC Ion, Chery, Wuling, and now NIO have cut with an asterisk on the word cut prices. Warren Buffett has cut its holdings again in BYD.
By like 0.2 or 0.3?
And BYD and the usual smart EV suspects have announced, shall I say, some resilient, some rather nightmarish January EV sales. China has reiterated policies to support vehicle consumption. XPeng has a new president. Lotus Technology has announced intent to SPAC. Tesla, BYD have released pretty good earnings, including GM as well.
Huge.
Xiaomi has leaked the MS11 EV and fined the corporate supplier for renminbi 1 million for leaking those front bumper pictures. Tesla has increased Giga Shanghai production to 20,000 a week. Geely Auto has teased a new mid-to-end high-end EV model series. Zeekr has previewed their first SUV, perhaps called the 003. And NIO President Li Hong shared some latest product updates, including their phone. BYD has 2 of its own shipping ships on the way. Last but not the least, Beijing has nearly reached herd immunity from COVID. and COVID has been erased from people's vocabulary in China. Where do we begin?
Oh my God. Take a breather. Take a sip of water. That was a long one.
Yeah. So sales, obviously, your take. Mixed bag. That's my initial reaction.
Not too surprised because of Chinese New Year and everything, but I think that not surprised. The usual suspects were in the top 10. The January numbers I don't really look to as any type of real indication of the strength or weakness of the market. So
no that red panic button from Mr. Tu Li yet.
Not yet. It's only January. It's only January.
I just thought two particular companies, NIO and Li Auto, were actually, I think, pretty resilient. If you look at 8,500 units from NIO, I was actually expecting less.
Okay.
So I think they were actually pretty resilient. Li Auto, I mean, what can you say? Just continue to surprise people with.
The thing about NIO is that if we're looking at year over year, which we probably shouldn't, but they had 3 products last year this time, and now they have 6. So would you actually look at that as still resilient at 8,500? Or
I think I look at not from year on year, but from the recent kind of December, what they were expecting.
That's fair,
right? I mean, if they did 10,000, I would say that's out of the ballpark. But they probably hit a double, with this 8,500 units. But I think the important thing to note is the comparison of if we talk about the segmentation and the positioning of NIO versus some of the other ones that really had quote unquote nightmarish numbers. Those are priced much lower than NIO. So in that perspective, delivering that many vehicles priced above 400,000 RMB is a win.
You make a good point, because the other top 10, a lot of members of the top 10 are on the mass market side, so which we would expect more volume to come from anyways because of the price point. So that's a good point.
I mean, Leap Motor is the most shocking one, I think, considering they were below Ito, they were below Voya, they were below Skyworth. Who the heck is Skyworth, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
But again, it's January. It's only 1 month. We shouldn't press the panic button. Yes, we shouldn't jump to conclusions. But
maybe I'll take that back. Maybe if you're Leap Motor, you should press the panic button because Skyworth beat you.
Yeah,
right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens, in the coming months. And again, January versus the previous January, February versus the previous February, because of the Chinese New Year, are not apples to apples.
Right.
So we look at Q1 together to really make some kind of early conclusion on where this is headed. But February is supposed to be better because it's a full month, although there's still 2 or 3 less working days. But
at the provincial level, they have put money on the hood in certain cities and provinces, or extended subsidies, right?
Exactly. And this is, when we talk about January EV sales, we got to talk about these price cuts, right? They're going hand in hand. And these, I think a lot of these price cuts, so Tesla is a official price cut, right? But I think some of these other ones are a little bit superficial. So let's say NIO, right? Their inventory 2022 model year, ES6 and ES8, depending on how many days they were in inventory, you actually get different kind of discount, right?
They're just trying to clear it out.
Yeah. So
that's typical automotive year-end or model year-end incentives. So
had they announced officially price cuts on their NT 2.0 models, now that would be something, right?
And the reason you're calling out the price cuts is because those are permanent. Whereas what you're referring to with NIO, it's just an incentive or a discount.
Right. And then some of the other ones, I mean, a Wulin Hongguang Mini EV from 32980 to 29800. I mean, how significant is that, right? I mean, And then you have others like Chery, right? They announced lifetime warranty on all of their vehicles.
That is just bananas. That is just bananas.
Yeah, that's an indirect price cut, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then you have like Volvo. Volvo, what they're doing is if you put down a 5,000 RMB deposit before the end of March, that goes toward a 25,000 RMB equivalent on the when you pay for the vehicle. I mean, right? That's a 20,000 RMB drop, basically.
What all these guys are hoping for is that by the middle of the year, by summertime, the economy recovers, the automotive sector recovers, and they can kind of look past some of these price cuts and demand begins to kind of firm up for their vehicles, right? Because towards the end of this year, there's even more competition. There's G2 coming. There's Polestar 3 is coming. So the Lotus Electra is coming. So there's going to be a lot more competition, specifically in the premium space. So,
and these price cuts, these sales month on month or year over year drops, they're not all created equal, right? You wonder some of these price cuts, are they really in response to the Tesla price cut? Probably not, because a 30,000 RMB Wuling versus a 300,000, 230,000 RMB Tesla, you can't really compare, right? I mean,
no,
right.
So
it's just a matter of, I guess, there's some offensive plays, some defensive plays.
And that brings us to my post and comment earlier, I think 2 podcasts ago, where I said that the Tesla price cuts in China were defensive and the price cuts in Europe and the United States were offensive. So you disagree.
Well,
please do explain.
No, I don't disagree with that statement you just mentioned, but
okay. I'm glad we agree.
Well, it's good to disagree.
Yes. It's okay.
No, I think what you said in the newsletter is this really who dictates whom. So even though I think
that part of it,
I think even though Tesla was a defensive play, you still, what I was thinking is that I think they still dictate who gets to kind of react and act. In that sense, I think Tesla still dictates this dynamic. It might not dictate the competition or competitiveness wise, but look at all these price drops, right?
And you know what, Lei? I'm going to agree with you, because what I meant with that, and I should have articulated that, there is not one company besides Tesla that can push a market.
That's correct.
Maybe BYD, but yes, you're right. I meant China EV Inc. in coordination with each other can dictate the market to Tesla. So a number of customers or a number of competitors working not alongside each other, but just the sector is harder for Tesla to bully them as opposed to in Europe or the United States, where the demand for the 3 and the Y are still fairly robust.
You and I, and you in particular, dunk on Tesla a lot. We do this.
I think we're fair.
Yeah, we are. But after their earnings, right, the amount of power they have, the levers that they have, I think that there's nobody else, even the China EV Incs., have that capacity to do stuff that Tesla is doing. And look what happened, right? Ford couldn't hold it anymore. GM said they're not going to do a price cut, but
they don't really have a vehicle that competes with Tesla right now. So
exactly. They have 122 lyrics delivered in 2022. Right? and the Bolt EV UV, I mean, they're pretty cheap, right? Already
31,000. I looked.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the cost of capital for Tesla is also much cheaper than the rest of the legacies and China EV Inc. because they're still $500 billion company, $400 billion company.
Yeah.
So still very significant.
Yeah. So, even when you say it's a defensive play in China, maybe I maybe I half agree with you. It's kind of a mixed in between, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay. But the other reason I say that is because it's not their first price cut.
no, and it's not their last.
It's not, for sure.
So,
They are trying to pull that tail out until they can find that model refresh for the Model 3. But even then, will it go far enough to push out demand for the refresh Model 3 for another year and a half, 2 years? Because what they need is almost a clean sheet redesign, because any small updates might not move the needle from a sales standpoint, especially if it physically doesn't change that much, or from a software standpoint, it's not version 2 of the stack is not a lot better than what's currently being shipped. So,
and then also with the incentives, right? The Premier League channel, reiterated that Shanghai came out with that new incentive, which, right, we mentioned the last episode, that these non-subsidy stimulus measures will be coming to a city next to you or where you are, right? Not only Shanghai, to kind of spur purchase. So that was not surprising.
And it points to a 2022 that was just off the rails, outrageous from a sales standpoint. And the difficulty of keeping that up in 2023 with so many different variables.
It seems every one of these companies that has a relatively low volume base are looking to double sales. So case in point, Zeekr, right? Zeekr, it's officially announcing their target is 140,000 deliveries. And they did just over 3,000 in January. So they have a long way to go. But
when is the Zeekr 009 launching?
It's already launched. So it started the deliveries in mid-January. I think very small volumes, but
that's not going to be a high runner, right?
Yeah, but look at Denza, the Denza D9. Is it? They did over 6,000 units, more than Leap Motor.
For those wondering, Denza was a joint venture between Merck and BYD, and I think BYD's kind of taken it over. So
I think Zeekr is looking very much forward to the 009 being not a high runner, but at least a significant contributor to their sales increase.
Probably like a 1.5 to 1.7 to 1 kind of thing.
Right. And that 003 rumored SUV won't be launched or delivered until the second half of this year. So 001 is still going to take a majority of their sales.
But hey, let's quickly move on, because I'm being selfish here. I don't know that much about XPeng's new president. Can you give us a little background on that? That woman who spent 30 years at Great Leap or a Great Wall?
Great Wall Motor. He's the only person I would compare her with is An Conghui, which is the longtime Geely Auto. He used to be the Geely Auto CEO, and now he's the Zeekr CEO. So his name is Andy. He's a lifer, Geely, and Wang is a lifer, a Great Wall Motor. And she is a strategy guru in the sense that when she kind of left Great Wall last year, she came out with this report with this strategy consulting company list, and they listed all the kind of smart EV startups, EV companies, and in that report, the comment on XPeng was missing a kind of a distinctive, when you talk about XPeng, the brand positioning, the product's positioning. So I think this is an area where Wang may be helping XPeng to kind of re-strategize a little bit on the positioning. And, just a matter of the legacies needs the tech companies, whereas the tech companies now needs legacy experience.
Yes, I wanted to emphasize that because we are moving into the traditional automotive phase of our program and ramping, manufacturing, product planning. We've seen a lot of missteps from the EV startups in the United States, in China as well. A Rivian, a Lucid, they're not able to ramp very well. And we're only talking production units in the tens of thousands, right? So this woman is able and has experience with production numbers in the hundreds of thousands. And so this should really help XPeng.
Yeah, this is also interesting because China and globally, if we're talking about representation or diversity, lack this kind of a female number one or number two leadership. I think this is the only one that I can think of, a really prominent person being into this position. So that's in itself is pretty significant as well. And I'm not sure the
I think let me
yeah
comment on that. I think Asian culture in general doesn't prioritize equality that way. Not just China, just China.
Right.
You know, Japan, South Korea, things like that. So yes, and I think it's significant that they hired her.
Yeah, you have Mary Barr, right, as GM, and now you have Wang Fengying at XPeng. And the other person I could think of that I feel is similar to her is Tom Zhu from Tesla. In the sense of low key, you don't hear too much about her. She's just, operationally,
Ninja.
she's the person behind Jack Wei, the chairman, right? Behind the scenes, really making it work. But I don't know, to be honest, that this, how it's too early to say that this will be a good hire.
I agree.
I mean, Great Wall Motor, they're pretty self-innovative, right? They launched all these brands, which I think is something Wang might do. Kind of maybe is XPeng thinking of different brands, tiered brands? Who knows?
Well, they originally had planned to launch one refresh product and 2 new products this year, and they've upped that to 5.
Yeah.
So they're going to be very busy with trying to work through all of that complexity and create distinct positioning for each of those products in the market. So maybe she's going to be a very important asset in helping them do that.
And like, Elon and Tom Zhu, I feel almost that He Xiaopeng, he needs to relieve some of his kind of responsibilities on the operational side of things to Wang, so that, he's still the CEO, right?
Yeah. By title or by not, he's de facto CEO. And I'm referring to Elon. But I did speak with a journalist today about Tesla and their operations. And she did ask me about Tom Zhu. And the thing that the Elon Tom Zhu situation, relationship, and that hierarchy reminded me of, and this will kind of indicate how old I am, which I'm very old. It reminded me of Steve hiring Tim Cook, because Tim was...
I agree, 100%.
Tim was the operational ninja. He came from Compaq, I think, and Tim was silent. He let Steve do all the talking, the showman, and so...
Exactly. This is the same with Wang and He, almost.
And it's important for Tesla because they've reached this inflection point. They're building in 4 countries, and although they're anchored in Shanghai, let's not kid ourselves. They're not anchored in the United States. They're anchored in Shanghai. And the flexibility that Shanghai would have created had they launched new products, refreshed products, would have allowed them to be even more aggressive in the market. But it's actually a bit of a weight on Tesla right now because they need to cut prices in order to maintain a certain level of utilization for the Shanghai Giga, right?
And that won't last forever, as you pointed out in the newsletter.
Yeah, and they pushed out moving to 2 million units, right? So, because remember, and you know this, I'm just reminding the audience, originally they were going to build another gigafactory right next door to Shanghai Gigafactory that was going to be another 1 million units. And that was supposed to start being built last year. And they decided to push that out because guess what? The Model 3 and the Model Y will not take 2 million units of sales in China in its current form. So speaking of XPeng, the big 3 this year, based on that late post auto article, combined 750,000 units
target in deliveries. So NIO, XPeng, and Li Auto. Yeah, and all of their product lineup are now set for 2023. We know, right? It's already been announced. So a huge year again in terms of these new launches and this just the big three, these three companies, U.S. listed, big three. Yeah,
I still need to see NIO get out of the operational woods.
Right, that still hasn't happened. We're still waiting for that. Yeah, right.
Yes. And I'm hoping that a slow January and a slow February allows them to kind of get it all aligned. And so coming out of March and April, they shoot out like a rocket.
I mean, they have so much going on, right? Based on what Li Hong revealed at that user meetup. Second brand to be starting deliveries next year. Third brand debuting next year. ED5 shooting brake. NIO phone supposedly to launch right before the National Day holidays.
They're trying to set the pace in the premium space, right? So
we talked about Lotus Technology IPO. Zeekr is IPOing. Zeekr is launching in Europe. Zeekr is supposed to launch that OTA of the supervision, and they're supposed to launch that level 4 consumer vehicle in 2024 with Mobileye.
Yeah.
And if we look at Li Shufu's babies that have IPO, right? Volvo, Polestar, eCar-X, Zeekr, and Lotus Tech. And all going up in this kind of climate, right? As we know, the too simple climate.
So somebody had asked me about Lotus a couple of days ago, and I looked up the dimensions of an EX90, a Polestar 3, and a Lotus Electra.
Electra, yeah.
And the Electra is actually longer than the EX90 and the Polestar 3. And so they're going to go, they're not same, but they're same.
Yeah.
So in China, I believe the Lotus Electra is going to be a high runner with women.
Yeah, we talked about this before, yeah.
Yeah, the family car, and then the Polestar will be a bit more on the BMW type of buyer. So can they thread that needle in China, do you think?
I don't know.
Because it just seems really weird for them to have these three brands that are all seemingly going to kind of sort of compete with one another in the premium mid-size SUV segment. So I'm excited to see. I think the Lotus will do pretty well. It is going to really open up the brand to a new audience, because when it was more of a niche brand, I think it was 99% males that were attracted to the Lotus brand, and Brits, a lot of Brits.
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah, Li Shufu is if he can thread that needle with that stable of brands, Geely could be the next true global automaker.
And did you see that Norris new article on Volvo?
I did not. I need to see it.
It's on launching a MPV.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that.
Dedicated to China or Asia, and then all of their next other models are EVs that are coming, right?
I need to talk to my mole inside Geely, the one that you saw at CES, to see. I want to understand how much of independent thought there is among all of these different brands, right? Now, let me ask you this, because I'm not clear. Is the Lotus Electra and the Polestar 3 going to be built at the same factory?
No.
Okay.
The Polestar is built, I believe, in Luqiao in Zhejiang province, whereas Electra is in Wuhan, right? The Lotus Tech
plant. Yep. Okay. Because I would imagine they would try to share parts, right?
But Jidu supposedly is building in Wuhan as well.
Yes, I knew that.
So I don't know if there's any, alignment on that, but
depending on the factory, I don't know if they would actually be built on the same line. It could be a factory with two separate lines, but it wouldn't surprise me if Jidu Auto and the Lotus were built on the exact same line in Wuhan.
And also, Jidu and Lotus, their LiDARs are both supplied by Hesai.
Yes.
That's a common thread as well. So who knows?
So our good friend Frank Wu is designing everything that the customer sees in the Jidu Robo 1 to be different than the Lotus Electra. But the Geely is likely trying to commonize everything we don't see on the Jidu and the Electra. So those are the types of questions that I'm curious about, but we'll probably not get them answered in the next few months. Hopefully later this year, we can find out a little bit more. So I forget all of that stuff that you talked about in the very beginning. What else happened? Because there's a million things you said.
All I did was I just looked back at my tweets and my WeChat moments.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of get a summary of what happened. Otherwise, right, it's been 2 weeks and there's too much happening. Not only in China, but a lot of things here, right? As we know.
So it reminded me, $650 million investment from General Motors for a lithium mine that borders Nevada and Oregon. I think that's huge, huge, huge. That's probably not going to come online for another 5 years.
2026.
And yeah, okay, 3 years, 4 years. But, and that's, I think, an ideal situation, right? Because there then needs to be refineries built. And so they might not actually have useful lithium for another few years coming out of that mine. And it still needs to be approved by the local governments because the conservationists are talking it's going to destroy some sacred land or something like that. And then GM also is talking about moving into also cylindrical cells from pouch cells. So I like it.
Well, our good friend Alfred has some warning for GM.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not that easy, right?
I like GM taking initiative, exploring a lot of different options. I don't mind this.
Well, I mean, yeah, at least from their earnings, they're all very positive on
yes.
the outlook.
Are you hearing anything about Oliver Bluma's visit?
Oliver Bluma, so I think...
They're posting on social about it, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're posting social. This is much more of a gesture than anything else, I think.
Okay.
I don't think there was too much substance on the trip other than showing up and, this is our largest market and we're going to work with the local partners, Carriot, right? They showed that picture.
Of a GAC Aeon. Are they doing a teardown of a GAC Aeon?
Yeah, and visiting the local government officials, joint venture partners. I think he visited Changchun, he visited Shanghai. Today he was in Anhui, right, Hefei, which is their kind of an important hub for their next generation of EVs. Just to show that, China's open and we're the largest foreign automaker. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there for, he's there 5 days.
And he'll be back in April, I'm sure.
Yeah, and sure, they've had media roundtables, but, you're not going to get too much juice out of him.
But it's good that, I don't really have that.
It's, it's going to start off, next, maybe Ola is going to be there. Oliver Zipse is going to be there, right? These are going to follow. And come Auto Shanghai, you bet all the CEOs are going to be there.
So let me, it's 4:46. We will open the room up to anyone with any questions. And if you allow me to go through a few of my newsletter points, there was a Bloomberg article that talked about how China EVs are invading the world. I couldn't help but think of us like we've been talking about that for a very, very long time. So we don't need validation because we know we're right, but it's nice to see that attention is starting to be paid. Hopefully that also means that we'll get some credit and we'll get some listeners tuning in more and more now. Because I tell you what, Lei, we're probably going to be talking about China EV Inc. in Europe almost as much as we talk about China EV Inc. in China this year. So
yeah, definitely.
What else? I thought that was pretty funny. And I was interviewed for a Grid News article talking about charging infrastructure. And Guangdong province currently has more charging stations than the entire United States. So that should give you an indication of how far ahead China is on install base for charging.
Speaking of which, that NIO one-day record of 60,000 battery swaps. Right, 1,313. So averaging 45 and change at each swap station in one day.
I think the more and more I learn about the U.S. situation, like the more detailed I learn about the U.S. situation, like I can see swapping working here because people do drive a little bit farther. And I know that 2023 is going to be a big year for charging infrastructure, but you know, these trucks that haul things and these trailers for camping and stuff are going up north with their boat. You know, what do you do? Because if it has 300-mile range and you're hauling a 5,000-pound payload, you might get 150, 180 miles out of that thing. So you're stopping every 2 hours for 20, 30, 40 minutes. So that's going to make EV adoption painful for a lot of people. And it's going to turn a lot of people off. So the fast charging needs to be installed very quickly, but also, you know, what are some of these alternatives to charging? I think the United States really needs to be open-minded about what other things can we do, right? And ultimately, man, trucks, do we need that many trucks, right? That's pretty anathema for where I live because GM and Ford basically make most of their profits off of trucks and SUVs.
I think where you live in terms of charging infrastructure is even worse than where I live.
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty abundant in a small town, but
yeah, well, the Northeast is early adopter, right? So,
yeah.
And then the city of San Francisco, I was reminded of our nice trip in
Cruise.
Ant. And what was the other?
Strawberry.
So they haven't restricted any further. They just don't want to expand. The city of San Francisco doesn't want Waymo or Cruise to expand because...
Well, they were supposed to expand their area and also expand the daytime, right? So
yes. So the city of San Francisco, because of traffic jams that have been caused by Cruise vehicles, they are reconsidering expanding, allowing Waymo and Cruise to expand those services. I think it's pretty funny. My engineering friends, my technical friends that said autonomous vehicles will definitely not hit the roads anytime soon, they all pinged me. They're like, "You see this?
yeah.
You see this?"
Yeah.
I'm not an AV advocate. I'm just trying to tell it like it is. And I think they looked at our experience and were like, "Oh man, this guy, he's drinking the Kool-Aid." I'm like, "No, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm just telling you my experience." And so I'm not trying to be controversial, right?
Yeah.
So I think your tweet about too simple was too appropriate, too complex. Yes. And you and I have heard even more rumors over the last 24 hours about what's going on. And I won't share them. I don't think we should.
Yeah.
But it's in Chinese, you would say 复杂, right? Or would you use another word for it?
Yeah. Well, 复杂.
Yeah. So it's complicated. It's complicated.
I did warn. I talked to Tony Han, right, the WeRide, right, at CES, and I kind of hinted and asked him about possibly IPOing, and he said, "Oh, well, think about it." And I actually told him, you know, you go watch Too Simple and what they're going through, and then you think about it, you know.
Yeah, but if I'm being frank, I think the WeRide stuff is a lot cleaner than the Too Simple stuff. So I'm not saying that will influence WeRide into IPOing in the US. I think it's just a hard sell for a Chinese AV company to be doing that in the US.
Kursai, right?
But
already it's happening. So,
but that's LiDAR, right? Like
LiDAR, yeah. So
a autonomous vehicle is like a completely different animal, and you know, innocent until proven guilty. But that Wall Street Journal article was not great for the parties involved.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I'll bring up is Rivian's laying off 6%. So they are getting themselves prepared for a price war, but their current vehicles don't qualify for the price subsidies or the tax credits. So are they worried about the F-150 Lightning? Are they worried about the silver or the
Cybertruck
GMC?
even?
Yeah, maybe, So they have to be, and it's going to be all white collar. So all staff, not at the factory. The last thing that I wanted to bring up was this year's mobility conference. It's going to be February 14th, 15th, and 16th. Paul, Craig, and I have decided to dial it down. We've recruited Lei to help us. So on the 14th, we're going to be talking rare earth metals. 4 panel discussions on that day, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern. On the 15th, we'll be talking policy, China policy, EV policy, European EV policy, US EV policy, and I'm going to do a special interview with one of the NGOs here, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, to talk about some of the things going on in the US. And then on the final day, we will be talking Chinese EVs, we'll be talking legacies and Tesla. And the one thing that I'm pretty stoked about, Lei, is that I'll get a chance to talk to John McElroy and Joe White from Reuters. So we will have a lot of details in the coming week. And so we hope that you'll all join and have a listen. So more details to come. But that's all I had today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hands.
Yeah. And then the only other data I'll bring up is that CPCA had their early prediction of January NEV sales. I think it was just under 400,000 units. So that gives you an idea from December high of roughly 800,000 units?
Yeah, 800,000, I wanted to say. Yep.
Yeah. It'll come back, Other than that.
Yeah.
Maybe just a housekeeping. We will have several Max episodes coming up later this month. One is Mr. Baojun Wei, co-founder and CEO of InnoVusion, the LiDAR company supplying NIO. We have Silvio Angori, the CEO of Pininfarina, and then Marco Kohlmeier, the CEO of Holon. I talked to all three, and there's some may not be specifically China related, but I asked all three of them, obviously China questions.
You worked overtime at CES to get that done.
Yeah, there's some interesting comments. So stay tuned for that. We'll be publishing those. And
we hope to publish Bao Junwei's early next week.
Next week, yeah. It's finalized. So yeah, he had some great comments. Shocking comments, in fact.
Yes, he did.
On LiDARs.
He's a young guy. He's a young guy, too.
No,
so.
he's young.
On the picture, he looks young.
Yeah, pictures looks young. He's not that young.
Okay, because I don't carry that Asian youth very well. You guys do, so because you still have that full head of hair. Mine's like half gone.
Somehow Innovis used my photo on there.
I saw that. That was awesome.
I was like, what the heck?
Awesome.
It looks like I'm a customer or something. Holding up a LiDAR.
Hopefully they give you like a free t-shirt or something for using your IP.
I got this nice hologram postcard. That's all I got.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, man. So cool. I'm glad we were back in business. It was a little weird last week, not having my Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, filmed, we're gonna start a new stretch of 50 weeks straight of every Thursday, man.
Yes. Try it every Thursday, right?
Try it, yeah. Might not be at the exact same time, but
yeah, next week we'll try to be back at 3 p.m. So apologies for changing times the last minute. But
yeah, I think we covered everything. Yeah. So
thanks for joining us, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
Likewise. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from. We'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.